A high school graduate like you, not suitable for my son. Cut ties and leave the venue immediately.
That's right. Robert is an elite. Someone like you shouldn't be involved.
I can't believe you're still just a high school graduate. Why did Robert invite a person like you to such an important event? Oh well, since you're here, just leave a gift. It probably won't be a significant amount anyway.
Well then, here's my gift, though, and speaking of cutting ties, I'll also close the account with a deposit of $15 billion that I have in that bank over there. My name is Michael Jones. This is a story that happened at my best friend Robert's wedding. I've hated studying since I was a kid, always avoiding it whenever possible. My parents were worried about me and tried various learning methods that might interest me, such as drills explained by anime characters, puzzle-like educational materials, and trendy cram schools where classes are fun, but I rejected everything. Since my parents were both working full-time, they didn't have time to directly supervise my studies, and they were troubled about what to do. Despite my aversion to studying, I made sure to help out around the house since my parents weren't home much. Since I was a kid, doing laundry and cleaning was something I enjoyed. Watching the room get cleaner was fun, and more than anything, when I helped out, my parents would pat my head and praise me, giving me a sense of usefulness. And I became addicted to the joy of being praised. When I became a high school student, I started cooking as well. Even when I was in elementary school, I had an interest in cooking, and I used to make simple chicken soup or bake bread. Thanks to my parents having a decent income, I bought recipe books I was interested in, and gathered the necessary ingredients and seasonings to try making various dishes. With that, doing household chores became more and more enjoyable for me. Among them, my specialty dish was beef stew. At first, I used beef stew seasoning, but I started to experiment with seasonings, pay attention to the quality of the ingredients, and even got a pressure cooker as a birthday present to improve the quality, becoming particular about cooking utensils. When there were regular tests at school, even though I hated studying, I had to study to a certain extent because I couldn't afford to fail and repeat a year. So, my parents said they would make their own meal or buy some side dishes or lunchboxes from the supermarket during test times. But since I like cooking more than studying, I told them to leave all the cooking to me and came up with ideas like making pre-made menus on weekends and freezing them. Seeing my enthusiastic attitude, my parents seemed to realize, gave up on studying, and thought they would let me do the household chores I liked as much as I wanted. I hated studying and was bad at it, but I didn't particularly dislike school itself. Especially spending time with my best friend Robert was very fulfilling. Robert was the eldest son of an elite family who had served as the president of a bank for generations, and he was very diligent in his studies. We were completely opposite types. Even his parents always said, "Robert will definitely go to a prestigious university and take over the family business. So, first, study. It's okay to choose a club activity that doesn't require much participation." Despite those expectations, he was always diligent, achieving first place in the class in regular tests. Although we were complete opposites, he was very kind and talked to me, who was struggling with homework at school while trying to secure time for cooking at home, and taught me how to solve problems. From then on, we spent more time together, and when we were eating lunch together, I noticed that he was eating lunch of a convenience store every day. When I asked about it, he said his family, all of whom worked as bankers, was busy, and they would give him $5 to buy lunch. However, He had a small appetite and didn't like the strong flavors of convenience store food, so he was having trouble. If that's the case, shall I make and bring lunch for you?
Is that okay? But it takes time.
Don't worry about it. I make lunch not only for myself, but also for my parents. It's just one more, so it's not much extra effort. It's my way of thanking you for always helping me with my studies, right? When I pressed him like that, he agreed and said he would give me $5 he received for lunch as ingredients expenses. I declined once, but Robert insisted, saying, "At least this much," and I reluctantly agreed. I made lunch every day and enjoyed seeing him eat it and react to it. I understood his taste preferences, and the beef stew I made for him, who liked light flavors, was so delicious that he really liked it. Since dinner was mostly supermarket deli food due to everyone in the family coming home late, I sometimes visited his house to share my cooking. I happened to meet his mother once when she came home early by chance, and she said, "Oh, a friend of Robert's. Welcome. If you're Robert's friend, are you good at studying? Which university are you aiming for?" She bombarded me with questions, and when I honestly told her that I wasn't good at studying and hadn't thought about university at all, she muttered discontentedly, "Why this boy?" Seeing her like that, "Wow, this lady is scary." Just as I thought, Robert intervened and said, "I always talk about him. It's Michael Jones who makes lunch for me and sometimes brings dinner." Robert's mother smiled and said, "Well, thank you for coming all the way. Health is certainly important, so I'm grateful. Teaching him also contributes to Robert's growth, so let's keep in touch in the future." But her eyes didn't smile, and she looked scary. It seemed the fact I made lunch every day was conveyed, and I was appreciated for that, but I felt uncomfortable with her overwhelming presence, as if she was saying not to get involved with someone who is not good at study, and her eyes that seemed to be carefully evaluating me. The days of making lunch for Robert continued until graduation. And then, on the day of the graduation ceremony, Robert's mother came to me and Robert, who were saying goodbye. "Hello, you're Michael, right? Thank you for his lunch all this time. By the way, have you decided which university you're going to after all?" The mother, who seemed to look down on me a bit. When I told her that I had thought about it a lot but had given up on going to university, and that I was still immature but would try to live as a working adult, Robert's mother's expression changed completely. Her face turned into a demon-like expression, and I felt like I was about to get chewed out any minute now. When I was feeling scared, Robert grabbed my hand and pulled me away from the situation, saying, "Michael's future has nothing to do with Mom. Michael, they're taking class photos over there. Let's go join them." Robert was supposed to go to the best local college as planned, and initially, I intended to follow suit, pressured by my parents and teachers to pursue further education. I hadn't been a diligent student in the past. I failed to even get into a safety net university, and ended up hastily applying to a private university with a reputation for admitting almost everyone, with an entrance exam deviation score of around 30, just to get in. But due to the rush, I hadn't thoroughly researched the university, only to find out later that the tuition fees were higher compared to other schools, and there were additional expenses like donations. Not wanting to pay such a high amount of money just to study something I hated, I persuaded my parents. Although they could afford it if they pushed themselves, they recommended further education for my future. However, I had already decided not to go. Seeing my determination, my parents gave up. And so, entered the workforce right after high school. For the next 15 years after graduating from high school, I worked tirelessly. Unlike studying, work becomes more rewarding the more you do it, as it helps others. I found it enjoyable. I was happy to hear customers say thank you and to receive praise from my bosses. Even though there was overtime, I didn't find it burdensome at all. I was truly a workaholic. Even on my days off, I loved my job so much that if I heard there was an opening in the shift, I would immediately volunteer to fill in. Then one day, I received a wedding invitation from Robert. I was so thrilled, as if it were my own event, and I immediately replied my participation. And then, on the wedding day, the venue was magnificent. There were masses of bouquets, with white roses on each table. There were masses of bouquets, with white roses on each table. The wall decorations were elaborate, reminiscent of a medieval European ball. Robert had smoothly progressed to a prestigious university after his high school graduation. He was excellent in college as well, and rumors of his achievements even reached my ears while I was working. With his natural intelligence and dedication, Robert excelled as a banker, and his abilities were recognized to the extent that he succeeded his father as the president of a regional bank, while his father became the chairman. This luxurious venue must have been a testament to Robert's hard work. Come to think of it, since it's a wedding, Robert's parents must be coming too. Back in high school, I remember his mother trying to get him lunch from a convenience store, even on days when he was sick, and pushed studying onto him. I was probably left a bad impression on her as well. Not looking forward to this. As I was thinking about that, Robert's parents noticed me. As soon as I entered the venue, and approached me.
Are you Michael, Robert's friend from high school?
Asked in a slightly intimidating tone, I answered, yes, feeling perplexed. Then his mother continued, we were surprised when we heard you didn't go to college after graduation, so, what have you been doing since then? I replied, as I mentioned before, I've been working since high school. And they both sighed loudly in unison.
A high school graduate like you is not suitable for Robert. He's an elite among elites. Someone like you, who hasn't even gone to college, is not fit to associate with him.
Yeah, Robert is at the top of the elite. It's unthinkable for someone like you, a mere high school graduate, to be involved in such an important event.
Exactly. I can't believe you're still just a high school graduate. Why did Robert even invite someone like you to this important occasion? Oh well, since you've come all this way, just leave your congratulatory gift and go. It's probably not a significant amount of money anyway.
Their incredibly rude remarks left me speechless. Nevertheless, they were Robert's parents. Despite not wanting to cause a scene, I couldn't help feeling uncomfortable, so I retorted somewhat provocatively, you're right. If that's how you feel, then it seems cutting ties is the only option. Oh, and here's my congratulatory gift. Please accept it. Oh right. If we're cutting ties, I'll also cancel the deposit at that bank over there, the $15 billion deposit. But to my surprise, instead of looking shocked, they burst into laughter, holding their stomachs, and said, what, $15 billion? What a joke, you're quite amusing. It's hilarious that your screws are so loose. They mocked me, not taking me seriously at all. Just then, Robert arrived. I conveyed to Robert how his parents treated me, and that I felt sorry for causing trouble even though I had come to celebrate. I suggested leaving in this manner.
Robert, you gotta think about your friendships. You know, this guy just being a high school graduate is embarrassing enough, and now he's talking about canceling his $15 billion deposit. Not only is he a high school graduate at the bottom of the barrel, but also a big fat liar. It's actually hilarious. At this point, it's just pitiful and pathetic.
Robert, upon hearing this, turned pale in an instant. Ignoring his parents, he immediately turned to me and said, "Michael, I'm sorry for causing you distress despite you coming to celebrate. I want you to reconsider about the deposit. I know it's difficult, but I think it's necessary. I'll send Mom and Dad home, so please participate in the ceremony."
I promise you won't regret it.
Seeing him so desperate, I gave in and decided to participate for the time being. Of course, it couldn't be that his parents wouldn't attend his wedding, so I told him it was okay not to return them home. I tried to avoid looking towards Robert's family seat as much as possible during the ceremony. At first, I thought the celebration would be overshadowed by Robert's parents, but once the ceremony began, I found myself getting emotional seeing how splendid my best friend had become. From the consideration towards the invited guests to the small gestures, it became evident that the bride was a wonderful woman. I genuinely wished for their happiness. At the end of the ceremony, when Robert was reading a letter to his family, he began to speak about something astonishing.
Thank you all for gathering here today. I have something I want to convey to my parents.
Everyone in the audience thought they would hear a touching story.
First of all, I deeply apologize for my parents' obsession with academic and banking elitism, which has caused discomfort and inconvenience to many people over the years. Earlier, my parents insulted my dear friend Michael Jones, calling him a bottom tier, lying high school graduate. Michael, I apologize again for my parents' extremely rude behavior. Also, this is an apology as a banker. I sincerely apologize for the extremely rude behavior of our staff towards Mr. Jones, our valued customer, who has entrusted us with a large amount of assets. We are fully aware of our audacity, but we hope to continue our business dealings with you in the future.
And with that, he bowed deeply. Robert bringing up such things at a joyous occasion. The whole venue was buzzing. Robert's momentum didn't stop. Furthermore, my parents have committed numerous acts of misconduct. Here is the evidence. On the projector screen that had just been showing the happy couple's love story, evidence of misconduct was displayed. It was nothing but fatal misconduct as bankers, such as receiving kickbacks from valued customers, approving large loans without investigation, and increasing interest rates. Although there was a commotion in the venue, it escalated into a major uproar from the business associates' seats. Robert's parents were pale. Robert, after confirming his parents once, said, "My parents will be removed from all positions at the bank as of today. Furthermore, we will thoroughly investigate internally to ensure that such incidents do not occur again, and declare to rebuild the bank cleanly. Please continue to do business with us." He bowed deeply again. Robert's pale parents collapsed from their seats, unable to face reality or burying their faces. Although I felt that Robert hadn't done anything wrong, I was moved by his resolute rejection of his own parents and applauded. Following my applause, the other attendees clapped one after another, and Robert's wedding came to a close. In fact, after graduating from high school, I immediately pursued my passion for housework and joined a housekeeping service company, where I worked for about 10 years. The housework skills I honed over the years were surprisingly comparable to those of veterans in the field, and my colleagues accepted me as a professional without caring that I was only a high school graduate. Working in a housekeeping service meant not only doing housework but also often interacting with customers. Especially during the summer vacation, there were times when parents went to work while their children were at home, so they would ask for housework and meals for the children. I would do the housework, play with the children when asked, and then report on the chores I had done and the children's condition when the mothers returned home. When they said, "I'm sorry to have you take care of the children even though you're a housekeeper, and thank you for reporting back to me," I felt embarrassed but very happy. I felt fulfilled by doing housework, communicating with customers, and being appreciated. I loved my job so much that on days off, I would do housework at home. Since I had no hobbies other than work and no girlfriend, my savings grew rapidly, and I retired from the company after 10 years. After that, I established a company that operates housekeeping services. The company I had been working for is, well, losing a talented guy like Michael, and on top of that, you're setting up your own company. Looks like we'll have some competition on our hands, but they sent me off warmly. Although I knew nothing about management or accounting, I studied diligently, learning bookkeeping, marketing, law, and other subjects, and honed my skills enough to manage the business without any problems. I was moved to find that I could now understand things I couldn't grasp as a child through my social experience. Since I already understood the know-how of housekeeping services from my previous company, I standardized the housework and devised a way for even novice employees to quickly perform their duties. However, I thought it would be the best to provide training sessions, so I also worked on trial and error for the content of the training. Moreover, I loved listening to people's stories, so even though I was the president, I listened carefully to each employee's story. Especially at the beginning, since there were only about 10 employees in the small company, it was like a family. As a result, the turnover rate at my company was extremely low, and we had a successful start in the industry. Furthermore, as I was the president, I no longer had the opportunity to visit customers as a housekeeping service provider, but I served my homemade dishes in the employee cafeteria. Although they were initially hesitant, once they tried my cooking, they were impressed with its deliciousness, and now they all use the cafeteria every day, saying that the president's cooking is the best. Eventually, word spread among affluent customers, and suddenly, there was an influx of wealthy clients. Moreover, we were referred by ultra-wealthy clients. And we entered into large contracts not only for housekeeping services for ordinary households, but also for nursing homes and care welfare centers. This was the beginning of rapid growth for my company. Not everything was surplus funds, but it was decided to deposit a whopping $15 billion in the company's name at the bank where Robert works. At that time, I asked Robert as a favor based on our old relationship, but a thorough investigation was conducted. In the end, everything was cleared, but looking back now, I felt that Robert really climbed to the top as a president at a young age because he was sincere and serious. It started as a business relationship from the establishment, and now we are completely super VIP customers. I was annoyed with Robert's parents, but Robert himself is not at fault, and more importantly, his desperate efforts to rebuild the bank make me want to support him, and as a result, the $15 billion deposit remains untouched. When we met at the bank, we were careful not to mix business with pleasure, and we spent time together as friends when we met elsewhere. Since that wedding, it seems that Robert's parents have been immediately stripped of all their positions at the bank.
Abandoning your own parents is too cruel.
It's all because of that high school graduate. All right, so at least let us work as bank employees. And they seemed to cling, but Robert rejected it outright. It seems they were completely kicked out of the bank. Such stories spread not only within the bank, but also in the neighborhood, and rumors were whispered every day. Feeling uncomfortable, they move to another region. There's probably nowhere that will hire them. Still clinging to the position of bank employees, it seems Robert's parents went for an interview at a bank in another region, but the events Robert's parents caused were already widely known in banking circles. Well, it's none of my business. On the other hand, Robert and his wife, Mary, are working together to support the bank's work. Mary, in passing, seems to have worked as a receptionist at the bank, and she was captivated by her graceful demeanor. Robert made one-sided advances, and at first, he was avoided and feared because he was the president's son, but after a year of persistent pursuit, they started dating. Now she works as Robert's secretary, managing his schedule and other tasks. She's very beautiful, so Robert seems to keep an eye on her when they go to business meetings with clients because she's often seduced. This time, she said that wearing a wedding ring would improve the situation a bit, but I wonder how it will turn out. The issue of fraudulent loans and illegal interest at Robert's bank has been covered in TV news and magazines, and the word bankruptcy comes to mind, but apparently, many of the clients who attended that wedding, including me, want to support Robert's efforts and encouraged him. Instead of closing their accounts, it seems they even supported him. However, it was difficult to rebuild, but Robert's natural intelligence enabled him to come up with new solutions one after another, considering the future. By cleaning up inside the bank, it seems that customer trust is increasing instead. Surely Robert will recover in no time. Several months have passed since then, and things have settled down a lot, so I occasionally visit Robert's new home. Both Robert and his wife Mary seem to be bad at household chores in general, so I joked, "Here's a housekeeping service," and helped out with the housework when I visited. By the way, they seem to use my company's housekeeping service regularly. I'm grateful that they are such good customers. When I visit, I treat them to my specialty dishes. At times like this, it's definitely beef stew. With practiced hands, I cut the potatoes and carrots into rough chunks, dice the onions, cut the meat into bite-sized pieces, and dust with flour. I quietly cook the dish. It seemed to be Robert's first time seeing me cook, as he watched with wide eyes. Mary also watched, saying, "You're very efficient." Feeling embarrassed to be praised, on the one hand, but feeling nervous and fidgety because both of them were watching me, I managed to make the beef stew. When I offered them the beef stew I had plated, Mary was surprised at my cooking. "I've never had such delicious food." Robert also complimented, "As always, you're good. This gentle taste is so comforting." I'm happy when they enjoy my cooking, and we spend a pleasant meal time together. Beef stew is versatile, you know. You can make spaghetti or potato gratin with the leftovers. Since I made a bit too much, why don't you try making something with it tomorrow? I suggested to Mary. The original beef stew is so delicious. I think I'll try making spaghetti with it, she said. The other day, Mary's sister, Linda, came to visit, so I treated her to my cooking as well. Linda stared at me while I cooked, and when I thought about it, she helped me cut the vegetables. It turns out that Linda, unlike her sister Mary, has recently become interested in cooking and has been obsessed with it. Linda and I stood side by side in the kitchen, eating the finished dish.
It's incredibly delicious. I'd love for you to teach me how to cook.
It's thanks to your help.
I just help cut the vegetables. I've only recently started cooking, so I can handle the basics of cutting, boiling, and frying, but I can't seem to get the seasoning right.
After being earnestly begged, she ended up coming to my house to learn how to cook next time. I'm teased by my employees for being so good at housework and having a domestic wife, but I'm still a man.
Can I come to your house?
Linda asked me with upturned eyes, and I couldn't help but gulp, but I convinced myself that it was just to teach her how to cook. Glancing at Linda, I saw her long hair tied up and her pink lips glistening. I involuntarily swallowed again, but what am I thinking? Pull yourself together, me, I told myself. I invited her to my house right away and introduced her to the ingredients, seasonings, and cooking utensils. Linda was desperately taking notes, looking very adorable. As I teach her to cook, she improves rapidly, and a few months later, she sometimes comes to my house unexpectedly saying, "I made it at home. Would you like to eat it together?" We spent times like friends, and I finally worked up the courage to invite her on a date, which she accepted. It was a very cold winter day. On the way back from the date, with Christmas approaching, the town was illuminated, and there seemed to be more couples than usual. In front of the big Christmas tree at the station, reluctant to say goodbye, and I confessed boldly, "Linda, I've really enjoyed cooking with you. I'd like to continue cooking together and spend time dating like this. If you're okay with it, would you go out with me?" In front of the Christmas tree. A grown man, in front of the illumination. There were some passers-by's glances, and it was a bit embarrassing, but Linda agreed with a slightly red face. And now, we're even having dates developing new recipes at home. When those recipes work out well, I also teach them to the employees of the housekeeping service company, and it seems that there are some cases where the employees make them at the customers' places, and it becomes a big hit. With this and that, the company has grown larger, to the point of employing a considerable number of employees. Recently, there have been talks of TV and magazine features like Hot Topic, getting inside the housekeeping service company. And above all, what surprised me the most was, how about publishing the recipes we developed as a book? Surprisingly, a customer who was impressed by the recipe made by the employees at their place turned out to be someone working at a publishing company, and they came back with a suggestion to publish a recipe book. Since Linda's contribution was significant in developing this recipe, I immediately consulted her. She seemed quite enthusiastic, saying, "Wow, our recipe becoming a book. Please, let's do it." So, we decided to take on this opportunity. Now, not only are we developing recipes together, but we're also busy with writing. At the same time, I secretly went to look for our rings. By the time this recipe book is completed, I hope we'll have the same last name, fantasizing about it. In today's world, where even high school graduates are often criticized, having only a high school diploma might be quite rare in the US. Certainly, having an education might make success easier. However, I don't think education and success in society are equal. In fact, I entered society without being fixated on my education, and now I'm running a company as its president. It might seem like hindsight, but there are plenty of successful people who are just high school graduates. Like the parents of Robert, if you become arrogant and stuck up about your education no matter how excellent it is, you'll fall into a pit. It's natural to care about your education to some extent. But I think everyone should challenge what they want to do without being fixated on their education and live freely, making the most of their strengths in society.